So, first of all, I'm from Northern Ireland. Anyone from Ireland here? Put your hand up. Okay, so what I'm about to do is probably not very PC, but I just got to do it because I'm in Brighton, okay? I am from Brighton, actually. I live here now. Yes? It's a really creative place, and I absolutely love it. So I couldn't resist the fact that I'm actually on stage. So I'm going to tell you a little story about creativity. Forgive me for the Irish person in here. So Paddy Englishman, Paddy Irishman, Paddy Scotsman, right, went to go to the Olympics one day. They got to the gate, and he said, sorry, you haven't got proof you're in the Olympics, you can't get through. So they went away to the pub, as you do, had a conversation over a few pints of Guinness, because it's an Irish joke, it has to be a few pints of Guinness. Suddenly, Paddy Englishman thinks, I've got an idea. Brilliant, gets very creative, goes over, rips the hubcap off a car, right, goes up to the man at the gate and says, Paddy Englishman, here for the discus, all right? So the other two are sitting in the bar getting a little bit with the Guinness and the whiskey. And suddenly, Paddy Scotsman jumps up and thinks, right, I've got an idea. Goes over, knocks down a telegraph pole, picks it up, goes up to the man at the gate and says, Paddy Scotsman, here for tossing the caber. So meanwhile, Paddy Irishman's left on his own in the bar. And he's drinking away at Guinness, and he thinks, I've got a brilliant idea. This is so creative, they're going to love it. So what does he do? Next minute, he turns up at the gate. He's wrapped up in fencing, and he says, Paddy Irishman, here for the fencing. Okay. Did that go? Can you all hear me? So I thought the sound went in the middle. Talk about that. So I had to tell a joke. I can say now I've told a joke in Brighton at the Grand, okay? So I'm hoping it's going to be my future life. Okay, so now you're going to guess my colour in a minute. I am so sorry to the Lumina organisers for what I'm about to do. I am very high on the yellow, and I love when you get a little bit overstretched. If you remember, that goes to chaos. Absolutely. So I'm going to give you a challenge. It's part red in here because I'd like you to do this as quick as possible because I like to know who I'm talking to. I love to engage the audience. So I'd like all the reds are those who identify with, as we say here in Brighton. So you have to like make a call. Is that your kind of lead highest thing? Okay, that's for the yellows. You might not be able to decide quite there. So what I like is all the reds over in this area, please. Don't move till I say. That's where I needed my drum roll, really. You can come and bang these drums. I'd like to have, all the blues about here, please. And I'd like to have, working out who you are, the yellows about here, please. And the greens in the social area over there. All right? So I'm going to give you, just as fast as you can, to do a quick move. Maybe take your notebook, because the rest of the presentation will be in that order. Hop, off you go. Yeah, you might hit a beat. Come on, you'll see why in a minute. I'm ex-army, love the drum. Feel free to drum anytime. Get going. Hit a beat, go for it. Get them in there. Come on, let's get moving. Reds. Blues.
Sorry, I just need to adjust your mic.
My mic's... Am I going to go up in flames? Okay. Are we there? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, my willing assistants. You can sit down sort of at the tables again, just for now. Apparently my mic was overloading already. So have a sit down just for a minute. Okay. That's brilliant. Okay, so just take a seat, wherever you may be. I'm okay. Oh, let me have a look here. Let me look. Good spread. Look at the greens. They've gone away over there in the social area. You can come back in, greens. It's all right. Join us. Okay. Yellows. Is this the yellows here? Yes. Blues, wave your hands. Blues, brilliant. Reds, gosh, there's a lot. There's a lot of those reds. We'll have to be careful. You have to gang up over here, right? Okay, so what's my talk going to be about? First of all, I come from Thales, UK. We're a global company. There's about 60,000 people worldwide. We are actually a defence company, but we also, so we work in land, air, under the water, and in space. So we as L&D professionals get to do a lot. And two of my colleagues are at the back there. Okay, so we get to do a lot of these things. We go out and do lots of programs across the company with that sort of customer. We also do external business. So I just come from a week of working with the Financial Times at the Oval, which is absolutely brilliant. We applied Lumina, and we're in the middle of all of that now, and we had lots of fun with that. What else do? We work in the railways. So we work in a lot of your signalling systems. We also work, just to frighten you, we work in the mission control systems, so the cockpits in the aircraft. Yep, we work there. We also work in your finance systems. Every time you put your chip and pin in, we work there as well. The previous speaker, where have you gone? Where's she gone? Can't see if you're looking. Where'd you go? Oh, over there, red. Thank you. So I'm just going to say at the end if I remember, so remind me in case I forget, but most of what you said, absolutely true. All of it actually is absolutely true. And I'm going to say what we're doing, because we're doing a lot in all those space to deal with all of those things. So I just moved you around because I like to know where I'm actually at and who I'm dealing with. And then when I explain, what I'm going on to do here is to explain to you a systems approach to creative problem solving. Now, we have a number of principles which I'm going to go through. How to be human-centered, collaborative, discovery-based, creative, and action-orientated. Then I'll be looking at how you create the right environment for innovation. What's the difference between creativity and innovation? Novelty?
Innovation is something that's truly new, and creativity can be expression.
Exactly. So creativity can be expression. You can just go and express. You don't actually have to go anywhere with it. You can just be expressive. We get lots of that in Brighton. It's great fun. But we also get huge. We got more, apparently, innovation from Brighton. There's more new products coming out of Brighton than there are anywhere else in the country. So there's high creativity down here, and it's fantastic fun. We have more companies in Brighton that are below, I think it's something like 1,000 people. So we have loads and loads of startups in here, which is great. I love this place. And I'm going to talk to you about how you create the right environment because, as the previous speaker said, one of the challenges we have in Thales is that we are a very process-oriented company. We have this massive system we put in place, which is so like, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And they have realized in the last 6 or 7 years that is really a challenge for us, especially because we want to be creative, and we have to be creative to innovate, and then because we need new products to do what we do. So we've actually embarked on a whole program recently where we're bringing in a whole load new of innovation centers, which will be more on that in a minute. We're embarked on bringing in new processes, and I'm trying to bring in, I'm working on bringing Lumina into the middle of all of that, and that's what my story is going to be about. Woo! So, where do I press this? What's happening? Here we go, high tech. Oh, who am I? Yes, need to say that, first of all. I have to remind myself sometimes who I am. Right, so let's see, where do I start? That's me, up in the top left. Yes, I got an MBE. There's a long story to that, and the short story is that I didn't give up. That's what I was told. I didn't give up. I transformed learning in the British Army way back whenever the internet first started. I convinced the Army, Navy, and RAF that it was really worthwhile putting in a system and going into the whole digital world. That was way back in 2003. So I did that. So I was an early adopter of technology. So I'm absolutely up for everything you're saying around the digitization. Things great. So then when I left the Army, that was 16 years in there, I was an educational training services officer in the Army, but then I actually did a Master's in Design of Information Systems. That took me off into operational theatres, and I used to fly into all kind of operational zones, putting in headquarters systems. That started to get me really fascinated about the kind of stress the guys go under whenever they're in those tough situations. So I wasn't taught much about psychology when I was in the military, but when I left the military, I really started to embark on a whole journey of learning about this. So when I left the military, this on the left shows I really started getting into psychometrics. Started my journey a bit traditionally with Myers-Briggs, so I'm a practitioner in Myers-Briggs, also a practitioner in FIRO. I also then went and did one of the best things I did, which is become a qualified executive coach and mentor, so I use that hugely in what I do. What else? I have to look around and remember. We use a lot of things like Covey and the 7 habits of highly effective people in what we do. So I came across Lumina a couple of years ago. I was running a lot of workshops and I was finding it really, really challenging. I'm really sorry if there's anyone from OPP here, but this was the challenge I was finding. Endlessly putting people into places and then saying, they would get very stuck and saying, I'm either introvert or extrovert. And I really struggled with this because I had whole groups look at me saying, well, I go home and I'm like this, and whenever I'm at work, I'm like that. So I really liked the dynamic nature of Lumina. And I'm also very passionate, because there's a bit of pragmatist in me here. I do really like to take the tools I have and into the work. So I like to take them not just in coaching, but into a team climate. And that's expanded up now into whole crazy design workshops, which I'll come on to in a minute. The other things I've done up there is massive bids, £250 million bids into the fire and rescue services. Anyone here from the fire and rescue services? No, that's good. We came second, we lost. But I had 18 months in that high creativity, my very first job. Future infantry soldier technology, that is there. Again, early on, that was a very high yellow. It was actually a lot of ergonomics went into the design of the kit that they're wearing there. Then I went on to do the Future Land Operations and Durability Study, which is part of Nightworks, which is a massive global body of experts. We went to America. Sorry if there are any pacifists in here. Stephen, where are you? I'm afraid we went off to understand how we could work with the United States and a number of other countries in terms of global warfare. But that one really sparked me off in trying to get into the psychology world, and actually really started to think I was the lead operational analyst on that, and looked at the challenges that people face when they're really under stress and really feeling that they can't get through a very difficult, challenging situation like they were in. It was a global warfare experiment, that one. I also worked with robotics, so I was the deputy project manager for Assisted Carriage System, which is a lovely new John Deere vehicle. I left the company for a while, by the way, and worked with Boeing. So I used to run around I was trials manager for a lot of these things, so I used to run around on Salisbury Plain and manage these things in exercise environments. So high yellow activity, loads more I could tell you in there, but all of these things have design activity going on throughout them. So about the time, by the way, I love experiential learning. I just had to put those 2 pictures in there too. So by the time that I had Lumina came along for us, I was actually running a lot of design thinking workshops. And this is where this thinking comes out of IDEO in the United States. I don't know if any of you heard of it. Quite easy to Google them. They are the leaders in this whole field. And you'll see videos online and YouTube and everything else explaining how you can really create a disruptive environment that leads to creativity and innovation. But one of the things I found was that we weren't using it very much. We weren't using psychometrics in this. Of course, Thales went down the route of a process and didn't use psychometrics very much. And that's where I've really started to bring it into the work that I'm doing. So we have a number of principles which underlie the innovation that we do. And these principles, which are in the workbook, I think, here, are, first of all, we put the human back at the center. Yes! Okay? The human is back at the center. Okay? Because, believe it or not, we were brilliant. We are quite brilliant, actually, in Thales, at designing things for space and going onto the sea and running vehicles and everything else. But we just forget at the end of the day that somebody usually has to come along and use these things. So we brought this philosophy back in, and it's like we make the people the heart and focus. We do lots and lots of work in that area now, helping people, our lovely engineers, to understand how people think. That's one of the key things that we do. And then we build on that to help them understand about diversity and how diversity is important. Yes, I said that in Brighton. Diversity is important. Okay, the other principle here is collaborative. If we are going to do and be creative, okay, we need to, this was deliberately coloured, by the way, we do need to be collaborative. So we need to harness that value, we need to harness that difference, and then we need to release the collective genius. We need to be in a kind of mindset, get into a mindset that is discovery-based. So we need to learn together. We have too much silo working in what we do. And it is endless. It's everywhere. With every customer I go to, they say to me, we're in silos. Do we know? I hope you know what we mean by silos. Working alone. Some others describe it as cylinders of excellence. Okay? They are silos, okay? And we need to drag these guys up, because we have lots of engineers, as I keep saying. We have to drag these guys out of there. They hate it. Get over here. And we need to throw them into these disruptive environments. Then they love it. They love it once they get into it. We need to help them understand how to embrace ambiguity. Because we do work in our world with, as I say, a lot of scientists, and they want to go kind of step by step through. They often have quite logical processes, and they've got really high logical thinking going on here. So when we start talking about ambiguity, and we start talking about the ambiguity that's in people, they're like, "Ooh, don't bring people near me. I'm producing a beautiful piece of equipment for everybody. We don't need to know about people." And also we need our action-oriented people, so it's another thing, because we could go away. They love creating things, but as I say, hate rolling them out and then putting them to test. So we need to get action-oriented. That's the reds kicking in there. We need to get them involved so that we can actually make what we actually create become truly innovative. And we are a profit-making company at the end, so we want to sell these innovative products. So these bits along the bottom that I have here, what I've been doing is introducing Lumina, helping and using it on the human side to help people, as I say, understand about themselves. One of our leadership competencies, the first one, is manage self. That managed self is not just time management. It is actually emotional intelligence and managing your emotions. And we do a lot of work with our teams, helping them to understand why that's important, helping them to understand themselves so they can manage themselves better. We then build on that and put them into a team environment where we really work to help them understand that we all operate in paradigms. We all have these lovely little models of the world in our head, and we interact with these. The problem in business is that if your paradigm is different from my paradigm, we make the wrong assumptions, and we design products wrong as a result, because we go down with misunderstandings. So we have to help people understand that we do exist in these paradigms, and we need to come out, and we need to communicate, and we need to work together to get solutions. We also help them to understand about adapting. You get a greater impact if you actually adapt your style. As is how I'm using Lumina. So again, I'm really stereotyping. So are there any engineers in the room? Maybe, our engineer community tend to be high blue-red. Sorry, but they are. They're very high blue-red, except for we get to our design authorities and they're quite yellow. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because everybody's got a place, as I'm going to show, in the process that we go through when we do the design thinking. Okay? So we introduce a process here. These bottom three here are called creative problem solving and design thinking, to help them work through. Once they understand themselves better, once they understand how to team better and work better in teams, then we bring a process in that helps them to understand how to get through and be creative in a more systematic way. Okay, so what's this called? The systematic approach that we use is based around something called the 4 Ps. You have to make sure, when you're looking for creativity and innovation, that you have a diverse set of people. Okay, a multidisciplinary or multi-personality, I would like to encourage, set of people. You need to ensure you do have a flexible but robust, purposeful process in the place. That's where design thinking is actually a process. It's a process that generates disruption, believe it or not, but it's a process that does it. and it's done by using expert facilitators to do it. The guys come in, they have some idea of the desired outcomes they want, but they have not, you have to get in early, they have not thought of the solution. You're in the wrong place if you come into the room with the solution already worked out. We work early because what we're doing is putting the customer back at the center of what we're doing. And the physical is we need to put them all in the right location together. The social environment is very, very important to generate that communication and have all the colours working together. Okay, so we have rooms like this, our physical space. These kind of rooms are design centres and studios. They are deliberately, that's fairly tidy there at the moment. We have things on the door which say, leave your ego at the door. We genuinely do spin the ideas of there's no such thing as a stupid question. We get people to be open-minded and explore. We get them to do the things that are up the top there, which is learn from failure. I'll talk a bit about in a minute. Build on ideas, but you do need to have some kind of interaction to have those ideas. We get them to do very different things, like that board on the wall there is covered in poetry. Words, you make poetry out of it. And we get them into these environments, we start to warm them up a bit, and then we take them through a process to really start to design something that meets your customer's needs. Is that not novel? We, as I say, are very good at, here's a product, you can have it, I've designed it, you really need this? No, it's actually designing to what the customer needs, the customer values, actually, I would say. So, that's the physical space. What do we do in here? We apply a whole series of processes. So creative problem solving is actually a whole series of processes used together. We use the best one for the need at that time. So we have very complex systems to design, things that are going into space, things that are going on aircraft. But if you're designing a mission system for an aircraft, it doesn't exist on isolation, hence it's disastrous if you work in a silo. You actually need to remember the mission system is part of the cockpit. It's a bit like your arm connected to your whatever. So it's connected to the cockpit. And the cockpit is part of whatever, and then the whole thing is part of an overall aircraft, and it has its missile systems and all the rest that are on it. But it doesn't fly in isolation, it needs fuel in the air. It actually, when it lands, it needs to have certain lengths of runways. It needs to fly in squadron formation. That's a system of systems. So we have a lot of that kind of thing goes on, which is why people get really challenged if they go along on things in a certain way. They need to be really getting a disruptive environment to think differently, to understand it. So we use systems thinking in our creative problem solving. We use lean thinking. If we can actually strip out any processes anywhere, we use all of those kind of things. These are all thinking methodologies. We use visualization. I love it here whenever we get into the visualization. All colors do visualization in different ways. But if we can get a massive big board together, we can get you all working together, which is the principle, we really start to unlock. Visualization is my favorite, actually, because it really is a tool that brings people together to create stories and really link up ideas. So it's a tool that I would really recommend learning if you have any kind of if you're not very good at it, there are plenty of tools out there that you can pick up and software tools. It's core to what we do. Diversity and personality, this is where Lumina comes in. And I shall explain more about that in a minute. We use organisational development to help people understand how whole behaviours act. As I say, last week I was working with the Financial Times. Did I say that? I was working with the Financial Times last week at the Oval. And one of the competencies that they have that will be influence the world. Influence the world. And we were spending a lot of time talking about how you create a social movement. Being who they were, when I asked them to stand up and do storytelling, their storytelling was fantastic. So they understand how people behave, organizations behave, and whole communities behave, and then whole cultures behave. And they use that. They use that very powerfully in the way they create things like the Financial Times. Design thinking then we use as well as a process that we run all the way across through the whole thing. So, what is design thinking? Here you are. Okay. First of all, what we do, number of steps involved in all of this. If you actually Google, there are field guides that exist for this. So we can maybe put the reference out later on that. But a fantastic field guide to start to take you through. The first thing you do, though, is actually quite sensible. Okay, it is 1, 2, 3, and 4 up there. We start with whenever we are looking at something and we want to generate something brand new, a whole new product, we start by saying, well, what else is this an opportunity for? What else could we do here? And we have tools that make people start to think upwards, down into the detail. Now, I'm going to be very stereotypical. I apologize for this whenever I do this, but this is quite at the start here. We've got the reds who really help us get kind of some control in this room and get us structured towards an objective. We have the blues when we do this exercise that help us think downwards to opportunities, the yellows who think upwards to opportunities, and the greens who really help us understand how we're actually going to engage the people, because engaging the people is critical all the way through this. We look at the opportunity. That's the first thing we look at. What is the opportunity here? Then we look, so we've got no idea what this product will look like. No idea at this point. We then scope the project, and we have all sorts of sheets and worksheets to help people really work out what the scope of the project is, but it usually ends up on 1 or 2 pages. We then draft the project brief. That's the pretty standard stuff. Must have it there to keep us right. There is a structure behind this. And then we start to make our plans. But then we go into a lot of the crazy stuff. What we're now going to do is go and do a lot of research. So at this point, here at the start, we are problem focused. Okay? We are looking at the user. We are and how we do this is we go out there and we look at what is at the moment, what is actually happening around the user. And we develop things called empathy maps. This scares the heck out of our engineers. What? An empathy map? What on earth is an empathy map? I'll show you some examples later on. We develop empathy maps. So they start by not going out there and trying to push a product on someone. They go talk to the people about what the people actually want. What's their problem? What's the challenge they're facing today? What's the difficulty? What do you value? What do you need? What do you want? We do all these kind of interviews. And these tools down the side here, step 5, they are all tools that you can use for all of these activities. Don't have time today to go through all of these, I'm afraid, but they are fantastic fun, creative tools. We do end up often creating the posters around the findings that we have. So we need to go out, and we have a mixture of people that do this, but we are looking at the reality. The blues are really kicking in, help us look at the reality here. The greens really working well in here to help us in terms of that empathy. So we're gathering facts and we're trying to understand what the person values, what the person needs. We then bring this together and we look at insights and we start to get our insights. The whole process is designed around, you have a problem, make sure you're working on the right problem. You then go divergent. So we actually need, we use the tool as a method of getting people to align their thinking. We need to go divergent. Who's good at the divergent activity and thinking? We do find the yellows are very, very good. So off they go, having a happy time. It's your chance to go way out there and start to actually look at all the possibilities, all the information. Then we need to get convergent. Who's quite good at convergent activity? Reds and blues. Blues are quite good too, because they're helping us to come together at the thinking. And so I've gone off and done some exploring and said, this is the situation around a customer. We then ID the insights. To get the insights, we need to get the right people kicking in here to gather those insights. And that's when you really now start to think, how am I going to design something? You start to get quite creative off of all of this, but you get your design criteria. So you do not at this stage have your product yet in mind. You then go off into the what if space. Who loves this space? The yellows love it, but so do the greens, because it's like you got to think about the people as well here. What if for the people? Lots and lots of things going on here. Looking at analogies, Games we play with Thief and Doctor. Worst idea, love that one. Who's got the worst idea? Let's see what we can do with that. All of these are just they're games and tools and things that we use to help here. We then start to develop concepts. Yellows, again, very big in here, helping in what we're doing. But then we need to come together again, and we need to kick in again. So our reds and blues are really coming in here again to help us get steered. So now we need to actually prototype and start to think, what does this thing look like? We might need to start to design it. So we actually they actually start to create things. They would pick up the pipes that are lying around here. They pick up the paper, they pick up whatever's there, and they start to create in these rooms the actual, what they think is the product or the idea for the product for what we want. We then go out and test it, which is great. Everybody goes off and tests this point. And we actually look for what kind of assumptions and things that we may have made that are wrong. We may have assumed that the user needs this, but actually what's wrong here? So we test these ideas, but then we come back and we really start to prototype it. We actually build it. We have whole centers where they are located with the equipment next door to actually build the product that we think and build a prototype to roll out. The nicest one, again, going with the previous speaker, was talking a little bit about this. We have one in Paris, and it's actually now called our digital factory. We are looking at digitization and what it really means for the business. It's in Lafayette. I had the fortune of visiting it the other day. You go in, and the bottom floor, it actually has rooms where anyone, including you, Stuart, anyone can go in off the street, and they can actually start talking to them about their products. And we have rooms down on a certain floor, which are called incubation. If you sell your idea, we like it. And we give you a chance, we give you resources, we give you a chance to start to build, design, and go through this process. If you are getting a bit better at it, you start to move up the floors. Sorry if that's how it works. You start to get into much crazier environments. The environments that they have, they've got gaming are in there to try and get people to think differently. Tools, facilitators, ringmasters, people like that. They apply things like Agile, which is they do sprint thinking. They do all of these things in here. They work in a really crazy environment. It's very like the ideal environment. Their meeting rooms are outside the building, along the side of the building, below the Sacré-Cœur. So it's very inspirational environment for generating ideas and creating new tools. So that is design thinking in short. So what do we do in terms of people? Whenever we first bring everybody together, working on the managed self aspect, we now really work to help people understand themselves first. It's the start point. We work now I like to encourage people to understand about diversity and the importance in it. So what I love is I start my sessions, and quite often the gender balance isn't quite right. So we have a lot of white males in the organisation that we work with, and they sit there and they think, yeah, we're all the same. Yeah, what are you going to teach me? And by the end of a session, they're like, go, look at that. And they've done the Lumina, and they realise that they have a personality diversity. The thing that's really good, I find, with this tool is we lay it on the floor with teams, the large mats, and what they actually do is we get them picking the cards as they do, and we say, that's your underlying self. And then I love the fact it's a very physical movement tool. So people, when we say, let's talk about your everyday self, the whole team moves. We then talk about your overstretched self, and we get into the whole area of conflict and conflict in teams and how you can start to recognize when people are overstretched. But the physical nature, the large stand-up nature of the tool really, really works for us. So people start to understand about the 3 personas and that we are different. They start to understand the elements of the 8 aspects. So we use the GROW model. If you remember at the back of all the workbooks, we have the GROW model. Well, we use that a lot in what we do. The GROW model is actually design thinking simply. So what's our goal? What's our reality? What are our options? And what's our will or resources in the way over here? So we use that model, we teach them that, and they start to realize when they have whole team pictures, we create team pictures for them, they start to realize where they might be strong as a team or weak as a team, where they themselves are best placed in the process of design thinking. So they start to understand themselves. They then start to value difference. And this is where we start to get really unlocking the creativity. Suddenly they're more respectful of the different types of personality that are in the room. Because they've really, really realized, in particular, what I find is that a lot of the creativity is actually not being used correctly in the organization. So this starts to come forward and come through, and suddenly we're allowing them to have a voice, and everybody has been able to speak much more openly. Once they get this valuing, and I do put the word on value diversity because I feel that innovation isn't going to work if we don't really get people to value diversity and value the contribution of everybody. Okay, we help them to understand how personality preference affects behavior. And we work on the principle of saying it's good for you to adapt your behavior. Because if you adapt your behavior, you'll have more impact. They start to love that because they start to realize how they can sell ideas better. So they're walking around, we do a lot of these exercises, red talking to blue, blue talking to green, and so on, how they adapt and change and what you might need to do whenever you're communicating. So we improve their communication so we can make these workshops work. And then we use this teaming, which I'll talk about in a minute, and directed thinking. By directed thinking, I mean we go through a process of designing by going like grow, goals, reality, options, and will and resources. Or the full, more complex one, which is actually design thinking. So we have people realizing in their teams they have a real strength to bring in a different place whenever they're designing new products. Teaming is something that I'm very passionate about. I have brought that in now. It actually comes from anyone who wants to know more about it. Amy Edmondson, who's head of leadership management at Novartis and Harvard in the US. Amy Edmondson, she has written a book called Teaming for Audacious Innovation. Her ideas are, I think, groundbreaking, fantastic. She studied why the space shuttle crashed all those years ago, what was going on amongst the teams, what happened. She studied the mine disaster where the teams had to link up and actually go and get people, not the recent one, but the actual miners years ago in China. What was going on in the teams and what can we learn from it? And she realized, again, backing up the previous speaker there, that actually we are living a bit too much like we did back in the industrial era. We don't have the right management structures today in business. We need to be far more flowing. We need to break down barriers if we want creativity and innovation. We need to aim high. This is what teaming's about. Set your goal high. Reds, set the goal high. Team up. Let's get together and appreciate all of what everybody's got to bring. Prepare to fail. This is a really important concept. Amy talks about psychological safety, and I spend many hours in rooms, either coaching or working with teams, talking about how you create a psychologically safe environment. In other words, people will talk up with their ideas. They will come into the space and express their ideas and feel comfortable, even if they think it's a stupid one. They will feel comfortable and learn fast. So she preaches about having a learning mindset, not a pass-fail mindset, but where we all learn from everything that we do. So teaming is a philosophy that I'm teaching now across the business, and I use the Lumina tool to really help people understand this concept and give them a real tool to understand how they can create a psychologically safe environment to design things that people's lives will be put into at the end. They will affect people's lives. And here's, just to think I'm finishing off now, here is an example of a team profile. We put things like this together, which if you want to design a new method in Lumina, I'd love to be able to do a bit more digital-wise. The minute it's cut and paste to create. I'm giving away an idea there. But they love this. They love these. And not just on a small screen, the ability to put them up on the we've had a whole IS leadership team of 20 people, all with their profiles all across the walls. They love these four aspects. And what we do is we talk to them about straight away the top two, whatever we call them, stripes, then the splash, and then we talk to them about their 8 dimensions and the 24. And we look at them and we say, okay, where have you got your reds? Who are they? Where are your real blues? Where are your yellows? Where are your greens? And they go, and then we find people going, you know, who are highly imaginative, they say, and the rest of the team goes, oh yeah, you've been having some good ideas, but we haven't really been listening. So then we get the excessive amount of extrovert that's in there, perhaps to just down and try and get them to come into the space and talk. Everybody is valued. Everybody must have a chance to express things, but we must get towards being action-orientated at the end. So everybody's got a place in the process. So this really starts to unlock, we actually do organisational development of that. They change the way in which the teams are structured. Sometimes to allow some to come forward, particularly where they have underlying strengths and they're just not expressed in the workplace. So they're really starting to understand much more than just process, but they understand about people, teams, and process in order to get to a final product that will actually meet the customer's needs, which is novel. So I think that in all, I was asked, I think that's the, are we there? Oh no, sorry. This is one example of a project which we did where we looked with the NHS at the pathway experience of a person living with Alzheimer's through the NHS system. So we all teamed up, aimed high, headed off. Of course, the ultimate idea is there anywhere that Thales could actually add a product to it? But we didn't start with the product because there's a whole new world we don't know about. And the first thing that we did is we headed away off once we got our team brief sorted, and we interviewed people all across the NHS, all the many, many different organisations. And then we created empathy maps. And this is an example of one of the studios covered in empathy maps. And this was very, very insightful because these are the real stories of people from both sides, the Alzheimer's and the person treating the Alzheimer's, real stories of what's happening for them. We then looked for insights. So, for example, one major challenge is somebody with Alzheimer's, unfortunately, walking away and getting lost. So actually, from a product point of view, Thales is able to think about tracker systems to help Alzheimer's sufferers so we don't end up with death, which is one of the real challenges. And they have other things to do with things they put in the fridge whenever they're doing a handover between two kind of sets of carers. And what do there's these capsules you put in the fridge with all your previous story in it, and how can we improve that and make that more modern? So by setting off a design thinking, we had no idea when we started, but these empathy maps and this kind of creative environment led us to be able to create some very brand new products to help in that process of looking after people with Alzheimer's. So I think to round off, I just picked up on your previous talk. So I would agree that we are moving in Thales, trying to move away radically from being so procedurally based to be far more open. We're experimenting with new ways of working that work around this crazy kind of environment. I'm bringing in things like, they're called holacracies, so they're bringing in whole new thinking about how teams operate and teams drive what you do. 2020, you mentioned about creativity being important, people management, coordinating with others, and emotional intelligence. The first step of our leadership training is emotional intelligence around managed self. In fact, our lead is actually Mike, who stood up there at the back. So if you want to talk to him about that, he's here. He's a lead on that. All of those are important for what we are doing now. Flow is completely about, we try to break down barriers everywhere in what we're doing in order, including bringing learning completely into part of the way we do our work. We don't drag you to the learning courses anymore. The learners are deployed into the projects, the trainers and facilitators, and work to do the learning, to create the learning. Self-knowledge is really, really important. So we start with that with design thinking. Disruption is a major issue for today. In fact, I currently have 16 Financial Times leaders, high performers, looking at the level of disruption that the newspaper industry is currently facing. They went teetering off with their Lumina. They're about to do Lumina Leader. They're in between things in the product. We are talking about ideas have now started to become unlocked from China, who are very, very highly creative, by the way. And they're going to bring those possibly across to what we do. I got thrown the challenge in the part of a project that I set them was like, they're facing a future where you might not ever have to actually read a paper, but a robot might do it. So how do they survive that level of disruption? That's the challenge they're currently looking at. And other things that I said, you mentioned here, the 4 points, a shift from hierarchy to organic structures. In Thales, the last 5 years, we've been doing that. Define your purpose and values. We're becoming much more value-driven whenever we're with the project teams, very important. Leverage your passion. When people are facing burnout, we really need them to engage with their passion. And I think the last one was strategy to sense and respond. Sorry, I might have talked to you about that one over lunch again. But, and we do a huge series of programs really looking at our leadership. But Lumina is now slowly becoming embedded in more and more that we're doing. We're making a change in the company and moving to be more globally focused as well. So a massive shift happening at the moment. And that word is starting to creep out into other areas. So it's very much, I think, sort of crept out and become part of what we do now. So thank you.